All right, let's jump right into one of the weirdest, most fascinating medical mysteries in all of history. We're talking about the American Civil War, specifically a battlefield where wounded soldiers started to notice something incredible. Their wounds were literally glowing in the dark. I know, it sounds like something straight out of folklore, but stick with me, because this might just be a wild case of battlefield microbiology.
I want you to just imagine this for a second. You're a soldier in 1862. You've been wounded in the horrific Battle of Shiloh and just left in the mud. It's freezing cold, it's pitch black, and then you see it. A faint, kind of otherworldly glow coming from your own injuries. For the men who actually lived through this, they called it angel's glow. They thought it was a sign, that they were being protected by something divine.
And look, to really get why any sign of hope mattered so much, you have to understand the sheer scale of the carnage here. The Battle of Shiloh. It was the single bloodiest battle in American history up to that point. We're talking more than 23,000 casualties. Just surviving at all was a miracle.
So, the big question is, how did this strange glowing phenomenon, born from one of the nation's darkest moments, turn into this legend of hope? Well, let's break down exactly what was going on at that battlefield.
You have to picture it. The battle was just pure chaos. It kicks off with a surprise attack, and then, as if that's not bad enough, a massive thunderstorm rolls in and turns the whole battlefield into a swamp. But here's the crucial part. The medical teams were completely overwhelmed. So you have thousands of wounded men from both sides just lying there in the cold mud for up to 2 full days before anyone could even get to them.
And it's in these absolutely horrific conditions that this strange story starts to take shape. Soldiers, and even the doctors, started noticing something really odd. The men whose wounds had that faint greenish-blue glow, well, they seemed to do better, a lot better. They were getting fewer infections, less gangrene. It looked like angel's glow wasn't just some spooky light show. It was actually saving lives.
Now, for almost 140 years, that's all it was. A really cool piece of folklore, a ghost story from the battlefield. That is, until 2001. And this is where it gets crazy. The mystery was finally solved, not by a team of famous historians or scientists, but by 2 teenagers for science fair.
So one of those kids was Bill Martin. He was visiting the Shiloh battlefield, and something just clicked. Now, his mom happened to be a microbiologist who studied soil bacteria, and he made this incredible connection between the legend of angel's glow and a very specific microbe she was working with. He and his friend, John Curtis, put together a hypothesis that was, it was shockingly plausible.
And that leads us straight to the microscopic culprit behind this whole miracle. It's a bacterium with a name that sounds just as weird as what it does. Photorhabdus luminescens.
So what exactly is this stuff? Well, Photorhabdus luminescens is a bacterium, and it lives inside these tiny little worms in the soil called nematodes. And the really wild thing about it, it's the only bacterium on land that we know of that is bioluminescent. It literally produces its own light. Okay, so this bacterium has this fascinating and kind of grim partnership with its nematode host. You can think of the nematode like a tiny living delivery truck. It burrows into an insect larva or something, and then it basically vomits up the bacteria. The bacteria then go to work, releasing this cocktail of toxins that not only kills the insect, but it also kills off any other competing germs. It turns the poor bug into this soupy, glowing nursery for more bacteria and more nematodes to grow.
And that right there is the solution to the whole mystery. That same chemical warfare that the bacteria uses to protect its food, well, it acted like an accidental antibiotic inside the soldier's wounds. It was killing off all the nasty bacteria that cause things like gangrene, and that's why those soldiers had a better chance of survival.
But wait a minute, there was one huge scientific puzzle left to solve. This is a soil microbe, right? It loves the cold. So how in the world could it possibly survive inside a warm human body?
Here's the sticking point. A normal human body runs at about 37 degrees Celsius, but Photorhabdus luminescens, it just can't survive in temperatures above 34 degrees. So, by all rights, the soldier's own body heat should have killed this bacteria instantly. Case closed, right?
Well, no. And this is the absolute genius of the teenager's hypothesis. See, those horrific conditions at Shiloh, they accidentally created the perfect environment. These wounded soldiers were suffering from massive blood loss, from shock. They were lying out in the cold rain and mud for 2 whole nights. They were becoming severely hypothermic. Their body temperatures dropped right into what you might call a Goldilocks zone. Way too cold for a human to be healthy, but just right for our life-saving bacteria to get to work.
Okay, so the science is beautiful, right? It's so elegant, it's compelling, and it seems to fit all the pieces of the puzzle together perfectly. But there's one really, really big problem. The historical record, it's completely silent.
So it all boils down to this one question. If soldiers' wounds were literally glowing in the dark on a massive battlefield, why didn't anybody at the time write about it? I mean, historians have combed through thousands of first-hand accounts. Think about it. Over 100,000 men were at Shiloh. We have their diaries, their letters home, official medical reports, and there is not one single mention of glowing wounds from that time. Not one. The story of Angel's Glow really only became widely known after that science fair project in 2001. And that's led a lot of people to believe that it's a powerful modern myth, a great story inspired by science, but not actually a historical fact.
But here's the thing. Whether it's 100% historical fact or just some really cool scientific folklore, the story of Angel's Glow and its tiny bacterial hero is having a very real and, honestly, a very exciting impact on modern medicine today.
You see, it turns out that Photorhabdus luminescens is basically a biological treasure chest. A surprisingly huge chunk of its DNA, around 6%, is dedicated to making these powerful chemical compounds. We're not just talking about antibiotics. We're talking about a tiny factory that could produce anti-cancer agents and who knows what else.
And this is why this whole story matters so much now. For decades, we've looked to things like fungi to find new drugs. But the massive, sprawling world of soil bacteria, it's this enormous, untapped frontier for discovering new medicines. So this accidental angel from a Civil War battlefield, it might just hold the key to fighting the superbugs of today.
So in the end, we're left with this incredible story that's part legend, part brilliant science. And it really makes you wonder, doesn't it? Back in a time before we even knew what germs were, how many other miracles, or curses, or bizarre historical mysteries were really just the work of the invisible world of microbes hiding in plain sight, just waiting for a couple of teenage